Do you happen to be looking for an inexpensive yet functional sword? Want to snag one for less than $100? Kult of Athena's Devil's Edge brand might just have you covered. Hello, this is Kyle, also known as AlienTude, here with a short review of the Devil's Edge Celtic sword I received in one of Kult of Athena's mystery crates. Being that this sword came from a mystery crate, I'd expect it to be one of the Munitions grade offerings. That is, a sword that has a defect that keeps it from being sold at full price. I can't really see anything about this one that would classify it as Munitions grade, however. The blade might be ever so slightly not straight, but if it is and I'm not just seeing things, it's so minor as to be nearly undetectable. I'm going to be reviewing this sword as if it were full priced at $129.95. The Munitions grade version is priced at $77.97. To get an idea of what kind of defects you might see for that version, check out my review of the Devil's Edge Xiphos I recently posted, linked here and in the description. So let's take a quick tour of the sword. We've got a knife construction hilt with a brass guard and in-piece, and two slabs of wood pinned to the tang via brass pins. This is a solid style of construction that should be quite durable, and looks nice enough if historical accuracy isn't important to you. One thing to note is that the fit of the wood scales to the tang is not great. The tang sticks out on both sides a very small amount. This kind of flaw can sometimes cause the grip to bite into the hand when the sword is swung, but I didn't notice any problems with it. The blade is leaf-shaped, with a stout, flat cross-section above the hilt before transitioning to a flattened diamond. Now unfortunately, Kult of Athena does list that it's made of tempered 420 stainless steel. For a bit more information about this, I'll again refer you back to my Xiphos review. So what do you get, blade-wise, for the extreme low cost of this sword? Well, to be honest, you can't expect much attention to detail, and it shows on this sword. There's some rippling on the surfaces of the blade, the lines waver quite a bit, and the tip is asymmetrical. Thankfully, none of these imperfections will really have much, if any, effect on the functionality of the sword. I'm not sure if the sharpening is done at the manufacturer or afterwards, perhaps even by Kult of Athena, but in this case it's quite well done. The secondary bevel is consistent and quite sharp, although I would say it's just a touch less sharp than the Xiphos. Before getting to test cutting, I should mention the Celtic sword comes with a leather sheath. It's the standard style that seems to come with all Devil's Edge blades, and there's not really any features to talk about. The leather is relatively thick, isn't shaped to the sword, and feels of low quality. It actually has some retention to it, but that retention is something of a problem. You can see it generally stays in, but the reason for that is right at the swell of the blade, it starts getting stuck in the sheath a little bit, like right here. I have to give it just a little bit of force to move it in. What that implies to me is that the sheath is ever so slightly too small for that swell of the blade, and it's actually just, I don't know if it's actually cutting the walls of the sheath or if it's just pushing them aside, but my bet is it's actually cutting them a little bit, which means I don't think the sheath is safe. I think that it's going to end up getting split apart by the sword eventually. And now, onto some test cutting. So this Celtic sword from Devil's Edge is a pretty decent little sword for the price. It's not expensive, and it really shouldn't be because the quality here is on the lower end side, let's be honest. But for a low-end sword, it's got a very nicely sharpened edge, even if it does have that secondary bevel. It was quite effective when I was cutting. It's easy to move around. It's fun to move around. It's got what I think is a pretty good point of balance. This one is a few inches out from the guard. I think right around there or so. One thing I did notice when I was cutting with it is that this pommel has the potential to be pretty uncomfortable. I was holding it like about, when I first started using it, about like this. And when I would cut, right there, I hope you can see that, it starts digging into my palm quite a bit, and it was pretty uncomfortable right away. So what I did is I adjusted my grip down to hold it more like this, a little further down. And that works because now, I mean, it actually looks like it's still digging into my palm, but it doesn't hurt at all. So what that does is I'm holding it back further in the sword, makes it feel like a more point-heavy sword, which gives it a bit more authority in the cut, and it's not like I had any problems controlling it. So it's just kind of an interesting thing to note that holding it where my hand naturally wants to go, right there, did not work for me. I had to move it down. And now it's time to talk bottom line. Is the sword worth the price? Well, I'm going to hedge my bets here just a little and say maybe, and my doubts here are due to the steel used. While 420 stainless steel is acceptable in a short blade, such as a knife or the Xiphos, the length of the Celtic sword is starting to enter into the realm where I believe the vibrations of the sword could cause some issues. Since I'm not a metallurgist or blacksmith, nor do I have any special knowledge about this kind of thing, I'm not sure whether or not it's too long for safety, and that makes me a little leery of recommending it. If I could definitively say for sure it was safe, then I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it. So that brings me to the end of another review. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, Alien Toot out.